Do you ever wake up and just, immediately feel completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of things demanding your attention?
Oh, absolutely. Like instantly.
Right. The phone is buzzing, you've got unread emails, news
Like
alerts.
billboards on your commute.
Yeah, exactly. It's just this endless barrage of visual and auditory stimuli,
Yeah.
and it feels like your brain is being forcefully pulled in 1,000 different directions before you've even had a chance to pour your morning coffee.
It really is kind of the defining exhaustion of modern life. We find ourselves constantly reacting to an environment that never stops shifting, and it leaves us feeling deeply fragmented.
But okay, what if the reason you feel so fragmented isn't just because you have too much on your plate? What if the exhaustion comes from the fact that your mind is literally being created and destroyed second by second, based entirely on what you happen to be looking at?
Now, that is the core radical premise of the source material we are diving into today. It's a really fascinating philosophical and spiritual essay.
From November 2008, right?
Yes, November 10th, 2008. It was written by an author named Swiffing, and it is titled Dialectics of Mind and Form, or Phenomenon.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission for this deep dive is to explore this idea that our minds are entirely shaped by our environment, or what the text calls forms.
Right.
And we're going to climb this incredible ladder of mental states that the author outlines, starting from a chaotic, stressed-out, worldly person, all the way up to what the text calls a serene, super celestial being.
Yeah. But to begin that climb, we really have to look at the foundational premise of the text, which is beautifully counterintuitive.
Okay.
The author states that humans originally have no mind.
Wait, no mind at all, just a blank slate.
Literally no mind. The mind only arises from form, which, we can understand as phenomena, objects, situations, or events. The text argues that if there is no form, there is no mind.
Wow.
And it uses some incredibly relatable examples to make the point. Like, it points out that without the physical form of a computer, there is no computer mind.
Oh, I see. You aren't walking around in the woods using your computer mind.
Exactly.
That specific mental state, the specific neural pathways related to typing or navigating software or troubleshooting, that only boots up when the actual physical form of the computer is placed in front of you.
Right, and the text takes it further. It states that without the form of parents, there is no parental mind.
Makes sense.
If the five senses, sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, if they have no object to perceive, there is literally no mind for them. The environment entirely dictates the existence of the mind. So, myriad forms give rise to myriad minds.
So if our mind is quite literally being generated by the things we interact with, then our modern world, which is absolutely packed with constantly changing stimuli, that must be wreaking absolute havoc on our internal state.
Oh, it is. The text perfectly diagnoses this baseline state, actually. It refers to it as the mundane or worldly person.
The baseline, okay.
According to the author, when forms change frequently, the mind is forced to follow that change. So when the environment shifts too rapidly, the mind becomes chaotic, fragmented, and just deeply unsettled.
Think about the mechanics of endlessly scrolling through social media feed.
Oh, that's the perfect example.
Right. You see a funny video, and for 3 seconds, your brain has to generate a comedy mind.
Yep.
Then you swipe, and it's a tragic news story, so you instantly have to tear down the comedy mind and generate a tragedy mind. Swipe again, it's an ad for shoes. You build a consumer mind.
It's exhausting just talking about it.
It is. Every new image forces your brain to generate a brand new mind for a microsecond. The switching costs alone are immense. No wonder you feel physically exhausted after an hour of doing seemingly nothing on the couch.
And the text describes a person caught in this relentless cycle as a, quote, wandering soul, lost and lamenting.
Lost and lamenting. That's heavy.
Because the mind is so restless, right? The spirit has nowhere to peacefully reside. Every new stimulus demands a new mental architecture, only to, tear it down moments later.
There's actually a vivid line in the text where it compares constantly chasing after these forms to having a thief nearby.
Yes.
It really feels like your peace is constantly being pickpocketed by your environment. You're sitting there trying to relax and the notification pings. The thief just stole your focus and handed you an anxiety mind instead.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this mundane state represents a complete lack of agency.
You're just a passenger.
Exactly. You are entirely at the mercy of whatever is put in front of you. If the world shows you something stressful, you become stressed. If it shows you something sad, you become sad.
The environment is the master.
Yeah, and your internal state is just a helpless, involuntary reflex.
Okay, so if chasing all these changing forms leaves us feeling like there's a thief nearby stealing our peace, how does the text propose we escape? Because, I mean, we can't all just move to a cave and avoid computers and social media forever.
Well, this is where we step onto the first rung of the ladder, becoming what the text calls a sage.
A sage, okay.
And a sage is defined as someone whose mind does not turn when forms change.
So they see the exact same chaotic world we do, but their internal state doesn't instantly morph to match the external chaos.
Exactly. They remain steadfast with the Tao, which we can understand here as the fundamental truth or like the natural flow of the universe.
Right.
The imagery the author uses is highly poetic. They write, flowers bloom and fall, clouds roll and disperse.
So like that.
No matter how varied or dramatic the changing forms of the outside world are, the sage's mind remains clear and calm, like the bright sun and moon.
It makes me think of a gyroscope on a large ship.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Like the ocean is the environment, the forms. It can be violently pitching and rolling, throwing the ship left and right in a massive storm. But the gyroscope inside remains perfectly level, completely undisturbed by the violent motion around it.
Yes.
It acknowledges the storm, but it doesn't become the storm.
And that stability is really just the first step.
Wait, there's more.
Oh, yeah. If the sage is the one who remains unaffected by the changing forms, the next level up is the celestial being.
Oh.
A celestial being doesn't just passively watch the changing forms from a place of stability. They actively transform them using their mind.
Transform them. How do they do that?
By understanding the essence of how the mind interprets forms, the text says that for a celestial being, darkness becomes dawn, winding paths become straight roads.
That sounds like magic.
It kind of does. It says suffering turns into sweetness, adversity becomes prosperity, and even death becomes rebirth. Because they can transform the meaning of the form, the text says they are playing celestial melodies daily.
Okay, I have to push back on this pretty hard.
Sure.
Because on the surface, saying that suffering is sweetness or that adversity is prosperity, I mean, isn't that just a textbook definition of toxic positivity?
I can see why you'd say that.
Right. If you break your leg and you just sit there saying, what sweet nectar this pain is, you're not a celestial being, you're delusional.
Yeah, you're completely out of touch.
Or think about a modern application. You're in a horribly toxic work environment with a boss who mistreats you.
Mm-hmm.
If you just reframe it as a lesson in patience and call it sweetness, you become totally passive. You'll never quit the terrible job.
That is the most common pitfall when encountering Eastern philosophical texts. But we need to look at the mechanics of what the author is actually suggesting here.
Okay, break it down for me.
It's not about ignoring reality or gaslighting yourself or becoming a passive victim. It's about a profound process of internal alchemy.
Internal alchemy. Walk me through the actual mechanism of that. How does it work without turning me into a doormat?
Let's go back to the foundational premise. The mind arises from form.
Right.
In the mundane state, the form dictates the mind automatically. A broken leg automatically equals a suffering mind. A toxic boss automatically equals a victim mind.
You just react.
Right. But the celestial being has realized that the categorization of the phenomenon, the emotional narrative, happens entirely within the brain. They decouple the sensory input from the emotional suffering.
Oh, so they feel the physical pain of the broken leg, but they intercept the brain's automatic story that says, this is a disaster, my life is ruined, why me?
Yes, exactly. They don't deny the physical sensation of a broken leg, but they actively transform the meaning of it. Pain is a neurological signal. Suffering is the story we attach to that signal.
There's a huge distinction.
The celestial being takes back control from the forms. In the case of the toxic boss, internal alchemy doesn't mean you stay and get abused. It means you observe the toxic behavior, choose not to generate an internal state of worklessness or anger, and calmly decide to find a new job from a place of empowerment rather than victimization.
You transform the adversity of the bad job into the catalyst for your career growth.
Yes, exactly.
You aren't pretending the winding path is straight. It's deciding that the winding path is exactly the route you need to take to build resilience. You process the phenomenon on your own terms.
You harmonize with it, leveraging it for your own development rather than being crushed by it.
Okay, well, here's where it gets really interesting, because the text goes one step beyond even that.
It does.
We've gone from being a victim of reality to ignoring reality to actively transforming reality, but the peak of this ladder is actually creating reality.
The ultimate state described by the author is the super celestial being. And the defining characteristic of this entity is that they create forms with the mind.
Going back to the idea of a video game. When you're the mundane, worldly person, you're just a player in the game, right?
Yeah.
Getting thrown around by the physics engine, stressing out every time an enemy spawns in front of you.
Yeah, just trying to survive.
Exactly. And when you become a sage or a celestial being, you've mastered the game. You know all the mechanics. You aren't stressed by the boss fights. You can speed run the winding paths.
Right.
But becoming a super celestial being, that's like becoming the programmer who actually writes the code for the game itself.
And the first thing a programmer realizes is that the walls and the enemies aren't actually real. They're just expressions of underlying code.
Wow.
The author connects this directly to classic Buddhist philosophy, quoting the famous line, "Emptiness is form, form is emptiness."
Which is one of those phrases that sounds incredibly profound, but can be really tough to ground in everyday experience.
It really can. It requires a shift in how we perceive the building blocks of reality, which Buddhism calls dharmas.
Okay.
To say dharmas are empty doesn't mean they don't exist. It means they are empty of inherent independent nature.
So a wooden chair isn't inherently a chair. It's an arrangement of wood, nails, gravity, human design, and the concept of sitting.
Right.
You need to take away the human concept, it's just a shape of wood.
Yes. The chairness is injected by the mind.
Okay, I see.
Because all phenomena are fundamentally empty of fixed meaning, they can be arranged and interpreted into anything. The text argues that because of this emptiness, forms actually arise from the mind, not the other way around.
That flips the whole script.
It does. Once you reach the level of the super celestial being, the author says, wherever the mind creates, there are green mountains and clear waters.
Green mountains and clear waters, meaning you generate an environment of absolute tranquility no matter where your physical body happens to be standing.
Precisely.
Like, think about being stuck in dead-stop traffic on your commute.
Oh, the worst.
Right. The mundane mind just screams at the steering wheel. But the super celestial being realizes the traffic is just empty phenomena. Metal boxes on asphalt.
Yeah.
They project green mountains and clear waters into the cabin of their car. They experience total peace because they know they are the architect of the experience.
And because you realize you are generating the reality you experience, there is a total lack of fear, worry, or obstruction.
That's incredible.
There are no attachments, because why would you desperately cling to a form that you know you are projecting yourself?
Okay, so if I realize I'm the programmer and all these forms are just empty code, then I could just rewrite the code to do whatever I want, right?
Well,
I can just ignore all the rules of the game. I mean, it sounds like the ultimate roadmap to serenity, but what's the catch? Are there roadblocks on this path?
yeah, attempting to just rewrite the code or ignore the rules plunges us directly into the two massive pitfalls outlined by the author at the end of the text.
Okay, it's a pitfall.
These are two traps that can completely derail the journey. Trap number one is clinging to dharma.
Clinging to dharma. We need to elevate that term a bit because dharma in Eastern philosophy usually means more than just rules.
It does, yes. In this context, clinging to dharma means rigidly attaching yourself to specific conceptual frameworks, absolute doctrines, or fixed perceptions of reality.
Like dogma.
Exactly. Even spiritual laws can become a trap if you view them as static and unyielding. The universe, according to this philosophy, is relentlessly dynamic.
Right.
The author cites a specific idiom here to illustrate this. 30 years on the east bank of the river, 30 years on the west bank.
Meaning rivers literally change their course over time due to erosion.
The flow of reality is always shifting. If you cling to a rigid form of dharma, if you insist that the river must be on the east bank because that's what your conceptual framework dictates, the text warns that this leads to death.
Death. Just full stop.
Well, it's a spiritual and intellectual rigidity that completely stifles growth. You essentially build your own prison out of concepts.
Wow.
Freeing yourself from these rigid frameworks, however, leads to what the author calls flexibility, vividness, and countless wonders.
Okay, so if trap one is clinging to rigid frameworks and rules, should we just swing to the opposite extreme? Abandon all structure, reject all teachings, and decide nothing matters because everything is empty.
This raises an important question, and it perfectly introduces the second trap, harboring non-dharma.
Non-dharma. Complete rejection of structure.
Yes. And the author issues a stark warning here. Harboring forms of non-dharma leads directly to arrogance and what the text calls the path of demons.
The path of demons. That is incredibly intense phrasing.
Mm-hmm.
Why is rejecting structure so dangerous?
Because emptiness doesn't mean non-existence.
Oh,
The universe still operates on natural, fundamental laws, what the text refers to as eternal Buddhist teachings manifesting everywhere. You might realize the video game is just code, but if your character jumps off a cliff in the game, the in-game gravity will still pull you down.
You can't just step off a skyscraper and say, gravity is empty of inherent nature, therefore I won't fall.
Exactly. If you become so arrogant that you believe your mind is entirely above these natural laws, that you can operate outside the bounds of cause and effect, you will inevitably clash with the fabric of reality.
That makes total sense.
The text explicitly states that even if you possess countless miraculous powers, even if you are an incredibly talented, enlightened individual, fighting the natural laws of the universe will leave you in constant conflict. You will essentially suffer in hell.
So what does this all mean for us? The author is saying don't cling to rigid rules and conceptual frameworks because that leads to intellectual death. But also, don't abandon structure and natural law because that leads to arrogance and endless suffering.
Yes.
The author explicitly admits in the text that this sounds entirely contradictory.
Yeah.
How on earth are we supposed to reconcile the need for structure with the rejection of rigidity?
The author provides a specific key to unlock this paradox. They call it the holographic perspective.
Unpack the holographic perspective for me.
So the text explains that if you are trapped in a confined space, meaning you are only looking at a tiny, fragmented, two-dimensional piece of reality, contradictions exist everywhere.
Right.
You are forced to choose between dharma and non-dharma. But if you zoom out and view existence from a boundless, holistic, holographic perspective, the contradictions vanish.
Let's use the visual of a three-dimensional cylinder.
Okay, yeah.
If you shine a light on it from the top, the shadow it casts is a circle. If you shine a light on it from the side, the shadow is a rectangle. If you're trapped in the confined two-dimensional space of the shadows, you will argue endlessly. It's a circle. No, it's a rectangle. That's the contradiction.
Exactly.
But the holographic perspective is stepping back into the third dimension, looking at the actual cylinder, and realizing both are true. Yet neither is the complete picture. The contradiction entirely disappears.
That's a brilliant way to visualize it. Applying that to mind and form, the author concludes that the way of the mind is consciousness, and the way of form is structure.
Okay.
They aren't enemies fighting for dominance. They reverse and cycle together to create energy. The form provides the necessary structure for reality to function, and the mind breathes conscious awareness into the form to give it meaning.
It's a symbiotic relationship. Form gives us the sandbox, and mind gives us the ability to build castles.
Beautifully put. And the author actually ends the essay with a rather cryptic, almost playful sign-off that emphasizes this very idea.
Oh, what is it?
They write, "The gate of Chanyuan is about to close, leaving this one method for you to play with."
Oh, let's clarify that real quick. Chanyuan refers to the specific spiritual community and philosophical framework the author, Zhufeng, established.
Right.
So he's saying his specific gate of teaching on this topic is closing. But I love that he says he's leaving this method for us to play with.
It completely shifts the tone, doesn't it?
Yeah.
After all this deep, heavy talk about paths of demons, celestial beings, and the suffering of hell, it ends on the concept of play.
Yeah, it really does.
It reminds us of our ultimate agency. We aren't supposed to be paralyzed by the paradoxes. We have the method, the understanding of how mind and form interact, and now it's up to us to experiment with it in our own lives.
Well, that feels like the perfect place to leave it for today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. But before you take out your headphones or dive back into the chaos of your day, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Think about the physical and digital spaces you inhabit. If our minds truly are booting up and coming into existence solely to reflect the forms around us, what specific forms are you intentionally allowing to build your mind today?
Such a vital question.
Right. The next time you feel that exhaustion creeping in, pause and look at your environment. Are you letting a chaotic, notification-filled screen passively construct a chaotic, stressed-out mind? Or will you take back the wheel, step out of the mundane, and choose to be the sage, calmly watching the clouds roll by?
The game is yours to play.